Welcome to the Luminous Landscape's first Photographing with the Masters tutorial. And our first master that we're working with is William Neill. William, we met officially on the Antarctica cruise about 6 months ago. We're now in June of 2014. And on that trip, I asked Bill whether he would join us and do a special project. And one of the projects that I wanted to do for a long time was to start a series for our readers and our viewers to photograph and see how the masters, our today's and contemporary masters, photograph and approach their craft. And you were kind enough to join us. So, Bill, thank you for being part of this. We are in Yosemite National Park, or right now actually outside the park in a little cabin overlooking the rolling mountains, and we wanted to sit down for a minute and have a chat. And
it's great to have you here. I'd like to welcome you. It's been my home for about 37 years, so I'm glad to be part of this. Thank you.
What a joy it must be to live so close to something so spectacular as Yosemite.
Well, it's something I fell into. As a child, I visited national parks during summer vacations, and when I graduated from high school, I started working in national parks during my summer breaks, and that's when I started getting interested in photography through backpacking. I wanted to show people where I'd been and what I'd seen.
Excellent. Well, just so our viewers know, this is our second day into our trip, and we had a little bit of a chance to photograph and hear some stories yesterday. Tell us a little bit about where this drive into Yosemite came from.
I started coming to national parks, as I said, as a kid, and enjoyed it. And then once I started going to college, I carried a camera with me on my backpacking trips and got very excited about sharing my photographs. And then when I graduated from college, by the time I was done, I wanted to be a photographer. So I went to college at the University of Colorado in Boulder and applied for a job in Yosemite and found a summer job. Came here in 1977. And so I was working for the National Park Service and backpacking on my days off and taking my film to the Ansel Adams gallery to be processed. So I drop off my little Kodak canisters and got to know the people there, and then a job opening came up in 1980, and I all of a sudden became a full-time professional photographer.
At the gallery itself?
The Ansel Adams Gallery.
Wow, if there's a place to have a job, that's it. So that must have been quite a turning point for you.
It was exciting on many levels. I had to learn how to teach. I had to learn how to help people make better photographs.
When you joined the Ansel Adams Gallery, was Ansel Adams one of your teachers? Did he teach you at all, or where did that come from? Where did you learn your skill to teach?
Well, they just tossed me out there, basically. So I had to just start talking about why I photographed and how I photographed, what I liked to photograph. But during the summers, the Ansel Adams workshops would come to Yosemite. Ansel would come. He would bring a lot of instructors. So I was surrounded by other photographers. Many of them were very well known at the time. Many of them have become well known since. So I was exposed to many photographers participating in photography on different levels. Some were commercial photographers. Some were fine art photographers. Some were professors teaching in college. So I began having experiences listening to these photographers, watching them photograph. And that inspired me to improve my craft and open my mind to different types of photography and get out there and do it.
So who in this transition or this time, do you have one photographer in mind, and I probably can guess the answer, that was probably more influential in the way you ended up going in your career and in your direction of photography?
Well, I don't think it's just one photographer. I think Ansel was a big influence, but there were other photographers. When I was in college, I took a couple of courses in just black and white basic photography. And I wanted to do nature, and my professor he didn't like color, and he didn't like landscape photography, and he didn't like Ansel Adams. But by the end of those courses, I was stubborn, and I wanted to photograph what I was inspired by. He kind of gave in, and he started showing me books by Edward Weston, Win Bullock, Minor White, and those people really impressed me as much as Ansel's work did. And they were taking photographs of nature in a very kind of mystical, mysterious way. And that really got me motivated to try to do that in my type of kind of intimate landscape color photography. So as much as anything, that group of Ansel Adams, Edward Weston, Brett Weston, Minor White, those guys.
Yeah,
really,
they kind of had their own little clique going back then too. So kind of cross paths a lot of times. It's very interesting when you read how many and how often they used to get together and so forth. So that's pretty cool. So here you are. You've got your kind of a career path. You kind of have a direction. You've decided you're not going to sort of go in a lot of different places. That your focus now is on nature and landscape photography. How did this transition? Somewhere we're in 2014 now, and you began this approximately in the 70s, so almost 40 some odd years of doing this. It's quite a journey. So you've developed a reputation. You've got some beautiful, beautiful work, and it seems to be well known and seen all over the place. Tell us a little bit about how that all happened. I mean, you must have had great opportunities and doors open for you, and how did you get to the point where you're hanging and your images are hanging in so many places, such as this house here and other places I've seen in the last few days?
Well, the Ansel Adams Gallery really was the central point of realizing I could become a professional photographer. So during that time, I'd meet a lot of people that would come in. I started to have work published. In 1983, the people that ran the gallery were considering, which was Ansel's family, were considering adding photographers. And I was able to print a portfolio, and Ansel Adams saw it and approved to represent my work in his gallery.
Wow.
So getting his stamp of approval was, of course, a huge thing. And that carried me forward into a lot of other opportunities, selling my work, and it was part of a resume as well. And I had started to have images published in Yosemite books, and it was usually one picture here, one picture there, but I made use of the tear sheets. The next time I wanted to do something, I would have credentials. So I slowly built up credentials and used them whenever I contacted, a publisher.
Your work has appeared in numerous publications. Maybe you can name a few, but obviously you've done National Geographic. You've done your own books, which we'll come back and talk to. You also shared with me yesterday that you had numerous assignments. People would just give you a call and say, you need to get this shot, or can you get me that shot, and so forth. So, how did that transpire? I mean, that obviously, the ball's rolling and it's getting bigger and faster all the time.
Well, I would send out letters and approach people. So when I started broadening out into some photojournalism and sending my resume out and my work out, that's when those type of assignments started to happen. I worked assignments for Smithsonian and a Gentleman's Quarterly, a trekking assignment in Nepal for Gentleman's Quarterly. I went to Tibet for Outside Magazine. It wasn't something that I really took off with in the long run, but it was the type of thing that gave me more to add to my resume, more experience, more images to add to the portfolio.
Now, you were also a contributor to Outdoor Photographer. I mean, that's probably where I got my most exposure to you. Is you had a column that appeared occasionally, and I just remember when I used to read this column and looking at some of the other authors, in the magazine, I always ended up stopping at yours and reading it because of your words and the way you expressed yourself were really from the heart, with a lot of feeling. Every one of your images and the way you talked about photography had a lot to do with the way you felt or a philosophy towards it, I suppose. I don't know if I can place the right word there, but I remember.
Hopefully it's sincere.
Very.
Yeah. My dad was a writer and journalist, and so growing up, and as I began to show interest in photography, he said, well, you need to learn to write too, because it's a useful tool in communication, more chance of getting jobs. And, as a teenager, I said, forget it, I'm not going to do what my dad did. And of course, that comes back to bite you.
We all had stories like that. Oh, boy.
And so while I was working at the Ansel Adams Gallery, I had the publishing credits. And as soon as Outdoor Photographers started publishing in 1985, I made contact with them with, a package. And I was my photograph was used on the second cover. And then in 1986, I started writing articles for them. And then 10 years later is when I started writing the column. So basically, I've been working with outdoor photographers since they started in 1985.
That's an achievement. I've had a lot of my images published back in the 70s and 80s, and then I kind of went off in a different direction. But, to stay with that consistently like you have, it's quite an accomplishment. How do you keep yourself, motivated all the time to continually do the kind of photography you do? For example, I know in my career, I've gone through a lot of changes, from commercial and product work to working in the lab business, the camera business. And a lot of times during that time, when I came back out, I started photographing landscapes, 15, 20 years ago now. I really haven't done that much with people. But somehow or rather, I always find, my passion is reignited when I either meet people like yourself or get a chance to meet other people and see what they're doing. But there's just something about this whole thing. And how do you manage to keep your spark?
I've kept inspired by the subject. The main key to my main body of landscape work is being amazed by what I see. So the inspiration, as we were talking about sincerity, it's just a deeply felt response to something. Okay. Keeping fresh, I've tried a lot of different things. I've done photojournalism. I've photographed in India and the Himalayas quite a bit, and a lot of people. And I would leave my 4x5 at home, and I would take a 35 millimeter and really enjoy a whole different type of photography. So I think the inspiration I can trace back largely to Ernst Haas, who created one of my favorite books called The Creation, and it was mostly nature photography. And it was very colorful, but very poetic and inspirational. But he also photographed the Himalayas, and he photographed New York City, and he did a wide range of types of photography, and I found that exciting. And so just the path of life has just led me to various tangents, and I'm not afraid to explore them. I think that going back to the Ansel Adams workshops, where all types of different photographers have come to teach of those sessions, and we've talked about Jerry Yulspin. Yep. I mean, he's as much a mentor to me as anybody, of how he talks about his work and the ideas of playfulness, because to put together montages, you have to look through a lot of images and play with ideas and be open-minded.
Well, I think Jerry's work is extremely exceptional, specifically because probably a lot of our viewers and readers don't even remember what a darkroom was like, and he used to have to do that all in the darkroom with multiple enlargers and multiple easels, and a lot of hand work with dodging tools and so forth. I mean, at that point, it was a real craft to do the kind of images that he does. Obviously, things have changed today. Let's go back for a second. And I'm going to drive you back into India, because your adventures to India led you to another significant piece of your life. You want to share that a little bit with us? Because I think it's a pretty fascinating story.
Okay, sure. On my first trip to the Himalayas in 1986, I was doing a travel assignment and went trekking on 2 different treks. And at the end of the trek, I was meeting with some of the people running the tour, and they brought some of their families, and it was just a dinner party. And the guy who was leading the treks introduced me to his sister, and we ended up staying in touch and a couple of years getting married. And so we've been married 25 years, and so India is a big part of my life.
And you have 2...
A boy and a girl, 13-year-old boy and a 16-year-old daughter.
And they probably keep you pretty busy. And
they keep me very busy. Yes, keep me young.
Good. Well, that's good to hear. And I always thought that was a pretty interesting twist of the story, and kind of very romantic in its own way.
It was meant to be.